As long as they've been around, books and their authors have influenced us more than just about anything. The question is, what kind of influence? Do they bring out the best in society, or the inner evils that we already possess? I mean, books don't just have their positive points, they've had a lot of negatives. Look at the case of John Lennon's murder.
Entertainers and musicians, John Lennon of the Beatles was shot outside his New York home. So we begin tonight by bringing you up to date on that story. John Lennon was shot 3 times at around 11 p.m. Eastern Time. He was rushed to New York's Roosevelt Hospital but died a few minutes later. Police have a suspect in custody whom they describe only as a local screwball.
After reading Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, Mark David Chapman, Lennon's killer, became infatuated by the idea of anti-phoniness. While he always had an interest in Lennon's work, he was angered by him because he believed Lennon was a fake, even going as far as to say he was a communist, a huge insult and accusation during that time. All of this hate and vitriol stemmed from that book. It shows what can happen when ideas from books find the minds of deranged individuals. It also shows the power that books put on display. It can not only change a person's whole mindset, but it can influence them into doing terrible things.
As you can see, books have a major impact on our thoughts and our actions. It is knowledge we use in many aspects of our lives. The killing of John Lennon was a lasting example of what happens when this influence reaches the wrong people. Bad things aren't the only thing that books bring to the world. Look at the huge positive influence the Bible has brought. It inspired millions, created a new religion, and is still the most bought book in the world. Another example is Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. It single-handedly changed the U.S. culture and started a civil war that ended slavery.
The object I'm talking about is a book, and in this case, it's Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. She wanted to galvanize the conscience of a nation, and she succeeded. The book appeared, there had been no advance publicity, though it had been serialized in a magazine. Immediately sold out. The publisher couldn't print copies fast enough. He soon had 3 pulp mills running just to supply him with paper for it. Sold 300,000 copies in its first year, in a nation whose total population was 23 million. 3 million were slaves, and maybe 6 or 7, possibly 8 million whites living in the South weren't going to read the book anyway. It went through umpteen pirated editions in Britain, and it worked. It changed the attitude of the North. Harriet Beecher Stowe could have preached a sermon, she could have written a didactic essay, a book full of statistics, but she wanted to get at the consciences of Northerners, particularly Northern women, about their indifference to something they knew was wrong. And she succeeded. She figured if she got the women, the men would follow, and she was not wrong in that judgment either.
How do you think books affect the mind and how it operates?
Well, it's a very interesting question because it's very important to understand that belief systems and the way you believe about things affects the way you think, and the way you think affects the way you act, especially with young minds when they read literature, especially if their belief system is not set in stone. If they read something that intrigues them or they feel like they can grasp onto, it can not only affect what they believe, but then affect how they think about things, think about their life, think about the society, and how they deal with things positively and negatively, which then affects their actions. So literature can be very influential, especially to youth and to adults, but it's something that it can be very empowering.
And what do you think was the most influential book during your generation?
There's a lot of books, a lot of literature, but one of the books that sticks out to me, not necessarily maybe for my generation, but for me, was Lord of the Flies, because it just represented how society can be so instrumental in the way people think, and when rules and boundaries are stepped over and there are no boundaries and there are no rules, how people can just take their beliefs on things that they never would have done just in order to survive, and do things that they never would have thought they would do, and just how instrumental it is to have some form of boundaries within everyone's life in order to be able to live in a civilized situation in society.
Thank you.
Like everything in life, books have their negatives. However, nothing creates bright points in our minds like books. It's because of books we can become educated, we can think bigger and better things, and it's because of books we have our beliefs, look at religions and things like that.
The truth is, books are both good and bad. Some books promote peace and love, while others convince people to do very bad things. But you can't deny that they have an incredible impact on society and the world.